Aaron, tell us about, let's start with the tax code. As part of this budget plan, which I believe Paul Ryan has introduced, there would be 2 tax brackets.
That's right. What we have today is the first step toward the coming fight we're going to have over taxes and also over federal spending. There's a tax component to this and a federal budgeting, federal spending part to this. Paul Ryan, who is the budget chief in the House, working with Dave Camp, who's the tax chief, together are proposing a tax plan. It's a broad outline. There are not much in the way of specifics. That would take the current 6 brackets and instead have a 2-bracket system where you would pay either 25% or 10%, or presumably 0 if you don't earn enough money. What they're not saying, though, is at what income levels you fall into each of those 2 brackets.
And in terms of the alternative minimum tax, I mean, this is another one they've targeted often in the past and are targeting specifically in this budget. They would pretty much outright do away with it. Is that correct?
Right. Congress every year tries to scale back the alternative minimum tax. It was aimed at making sure that wealthier people don't use deductions to lower their tax bills to, in some cases, nothing, to make sure they pay something. But it was set up in a way that it keeps eating into people who are not in the upper incomes, more in the middle class. And every year, Congress has to come back and figure out a way to stave off the alternative minimum tax from hitting middle-income people who it wasn't intended to hit. They say they would do away with it entirely, but they're not giving much in the way of details of how they would pay for this. They're saying that by scaling back tax breaks on the upper-income folks, we can raise enough money to do away with the alternative minimum tax. But the devil's in the details there. And
we'll get to a few more of the details of this plan in just a moment. But let's take a step back for a minute, Aaron. Put this into context for us. Why now are the Republicans coming up with this budget plan?
Well, there are 2 things going on. In the world of Washington, there is a real budget debate that has to get resolved. If you remember, when Congress and the president came to a deal that allowed the debt ceiling to rise, they said, fine, we'll raise the debt ceiling, but we will also put in place an automatic $1.2 trillion set of budget cuts over 10 years to make sure that in return for raising the debt ceiling, we start to take some steps to cutting the budget. Republicans are quite worried about this because half of the budget cuts, more than $100 billion next year, would go toward defense. So there's a real world discussion about what to do about these, what they call sequestration, these spending cuts that are going to take effect at the end of the year. And that comes up in the course of discussing what the budget for the next fiscal year should be. But if you take a step back, really what's going on here is the House Republicans are trying to fill a void in the broader political discussion about what the party stands for, its vision of government, of the levels of spending, of the futures of very big programs, not just taxes, but Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, defense spending. And that void is there because the presidential candidates are remaining somewhat vague and are still sorting out the nomination among each other and are not getting into the specifics and not laying out that detailed a plan for the fiscal fights to come.
And obviously the Republicans touting the portions of the plan they know will probably be most popular with the public, streamlining the tax code, doing away with the AMT, alternative minimum tax. However, what about the parts that Democrats are hammering at right now? Where do they come in on Medicare and cutting spending for issues like that?
Well, Medicare is a big one. Paul Ryan, a year ago, proposed a very significant change to Medicare that would basically end fee-for-service Medicare, the system we have now where the government takes the bills from the beneficiaries' doctors and pays them, and mandates that moves people into private health care plans. He has scaled that back somewhat. They're still going to encourage people through pricing to get into private plans offered by private insurers, and they've scaled it back in that they leave the traditional Medicare fee-for-service as an option for seniors. But the way the system is set up, more and more people would be encouraged and coaxed through pricing to move into private plans. That would be a big change from where we are now. Mitt Romney has endorsed this idea, and the Democrats are saying it's a fundamental weakening of Medicare. It shifts risk and responsibility for huge bills on to seniors, and that seniors will find private insurance unaffordable over time.